So I reached rank 1 bronze, and I'm working my way up through silver, qualified now, and the next sprint, I'll be getting my way up to gold, I hope. But yeah, that's quite the win rate, huh? That was my final push to rank 1, at least in bronze. And how I did it, obviously, was a lot of destroyers, as you saw from the ships that I was playing. Specifically playing destroyers to kill other destroyers. That's the best way to have battle impact. DDs control the game. They're the ships that can go scout out areas of the map that really no other ship can. Carriers can do some scouting, but just having destroyer presence in certain areas can make them safe to cross for battleships, for example. There's a Schlieffen on our team that's, maybe going to push across this choke point, and he could have easily eaten some gearing torpedoes on his way. But since I'm here, I'm able to take this fight. We know the gearing's here, and of course, a Smalland is probably going to win in a gunfight against a gearing, and of course, we take him out. And that's really the power here. This early battle impact, trying to kill DDs as quickly as possible, denying the enemy team not only vision, but map control and cap control. And it worked really, really well. Of course, not every game is going to be one that you can win, right? I just happened to get a string of games that were winnable. And of course, I did have some of those that were just give me wins, right? It's not like I carried every single match out, but I did do a lot of work in most of these games. Of course, a Smalland is perhaps not the best example, since it's probably the strongest DD in rank that you could possibly take, at least for tier 10. Considering the concealment, the radar, the healing, the DPM, even the speed boost. It's very maneuverable with this speed boost active. It's very powerful. This ship is actually just crazy. It even has torpedoes. Not the best torps, but enough to severely injure battleships if they push into you. Of course, you don't want to be taking fights in a Smalland against multiple ships. That's why I'm trying to isolate angles here, right? I put this island behind myself and between me and the enemy battleship, so we can just take a 1v1 here with the Holland. And of course, it's going to go pretty well. It's really, really, really devastating to a ranked team to lose their TDs. And that is what I was going for here. It's a lot of fun, too, to play this Destroyer Hunter role, not to be focused on damage numbers like in random battles. And you'll see a lot of the time that I'm just going to charge for cap zones. And I have to consider my ship's strengths and weaknesses. A Marceau has insane DPM and speed, but it lacks shell velocity, so it's not great at range, and of course, doesn't have the best concealment. So we're heavily outspotted by this Shima. We notice that there's a Des Moines at this cap, so that means there's a radar and some pretty good DPM. So we have to be a little bit careful. But you'll notice every time there's an island close by, I'm using it to isolate fights. I'm trying to limit the number of people that can shoot at me, and we get spotted by a Hydro. That means the Z-52's here, trying to use all the information available to us. And there he is. He's going to do his smoke hydro gimmick, but not before we get some pretty good salvos into him. I was thinking about stopping here and using his smoke fire against him, but I'm just a little bit too far away for that to actually work. So he is going to gimmick me here. But just look at the trade. We've already done 11,000 damage, and he's done 2 to us. 16,000 damage now, and we're full speed getting out of here. The speed boost is amazing for getting out of bad positions. So a really, really, really solid trade. But just because we ran away for now doesn't mean that we're done. We're going to push back in and try and take more fights, since we know his Hydro is definitely on cooldown, and his smoke will be on cooldown for a little while as well. Again, trying to approach using islands to limit the possible angles that we can be shot from. And I'm always considering my team support as well. So even though I push in here, I notice the cap is contested, so they have a lot of ships here. The enemy team does have a lot of ships here. So I get myself into a position where I can run away. I have enough HP. French DDs have this crazy saturation mechanic, so I can kind of rely on that to save me in a lot of cases. So get a few pot shots into the Shima. The Z-52 makes a massive mistake in opening up here, so we're just going to take him out really quick. He tries to do the stop Bing technique, but I've seen it before. It's really not going to work too well. And we take him out. And yeah, I'm not going to show the rest of this game. It was kind of running around chasing the Shimakaze, but we did manage to soundly win this game because the enemy team ended up with no map control. So Smalland and Marceau are really, really good gunboats, right? So of course we're going to win a lot of these DD engagements. What about a Yu Yang? Perhaps not the highest DPM. I don't have the ledge mod, but we are running radar Yu Yang. And keep in mind support. Support is so crucial in destroyer engagements. Just because Yu Yang isn't the best gunboat, I'm comparing it to a Smalland here because that's what's on the enemy team. We probably outgun a Shimakaze though. It's support that wins DD engagements. So I'm going to play aggressive when I know I have good support. I'm going to play a little more passive when I know I don't have as much support. Even if I know I'm outgunning a Shimakaze, let's say. Let's say I'm a Smalland against a Shima. If that Shima has support, I'm still scared. And I need to play a little bit scared, as this Smalland is going to figure out. It's important to keep our HP as much as possible, so we traded out the Shimakaze extremely well. We had a Smalland back us up, so there wasn't really much worry about losing that fight. But it's important to limit the amount of damage we take so we have health later on to push in and take engagements, take map control, and hopefully deal with this enemy Smalland. He has a heal, I don't. He has more DPM than me, and I don't even have a smoke to take advantage of him potentially not having his radar up. But what he does is he plays too aggressive. And this is a pretty extreme example, but look what happens when I have support. There goes half his health, and I think there's going to be another huge chunk coming in here in a little bit. It's just one of those things where, yes, a Smalland beats a Shimakaze. A Smalland beats a Yu Yang in a DPM fight. But any little bit of support the Yu Yang or the Shimakaze receives in that fight, it flips the table. It completely changes things to where the DD that has support wins the engagement, assuming both parties are playing reasonably well. So I push out, and I want to finish off this Smalland. So even with our pretty mediocre DPM, we're still going to be able to do that since the Smalland is on low enough HP. And when again, we're trying to limit angles, so the Good and Leo stuck on the other side of that island. And that's 2 destroyers taken out, tons of map control, and of course, we probably go on to win that game, right? Sometimes you might be in a destroyer with bad concealment. The enemy DD way outspots you. There's an enemy carrier. Every once in a while, there is an opportunity to push. There's an opportunity to take advantage of the enemy's positioning. So here I played passive to start with. Our friendly Wooster just YOLOs in. But I noticed this Shimakaze was kind of hiding in his smoke behind this island. And I assumed that, well, we could just sneak up to this island here on the opposite side of the cap from our side. We're easily able to take out the Shimakaze. Khabarovsk with its reload booster is just filthy with its damage output. And again, we're limiting the number of people that can shoot us. The Vermont and the Napoli had no chance of shooting us since we put an island between us and him. They're probably going to YOLO in, so I do use my torpedoes there. But they decide to push the opposite corner, so I do have time enough to get away. This poor Vermont. Yeah, that's a lot of torpedoes. Poor guy. I get the feeling that, yeah, you needed to push there. He does absolutely crush our Hindenburg, but unfortunately for him, pushing in just didn't quite work out since there was just a little too many torpedoes. And depending on your ship's strength, well, Khabarovsk is a great YOLO ship. It's got incredible torpedoes, it's really fast, and of course it's going to do really, really well in close range engagements with anything. The torpedoes are just that good. So I push up to this island, and my goal was just to stall the Napoli. I wasn't even hoping that he would push around. If he did push around the corner, he's going to die to my torps, right? But it's always a threat to have a Khabarovsk just sitting on an island. And notice how we don't even eat any secondaries. Just as a quick little tangent, secondaries could really use some AI improvements. They have horrible accuracy off the bat now that they've nerfed them so heavily with the captain reworks. And even when they are accurate, they just can't hit DDs. They're just too they just don't lead properly. So I'd love to see some more changes there. Maybe just give me full manual control so that I can actually aim them. Although that might be a little too good. As you can see, we're easily able to pepper this Z-52 at pretty long ranges. Full manual control on secondaries where I'm aiming them might be a little bit too good, but I'd love it. It'd be interesting. A little harder to balance, probably. But it wouldn't feel like an AI is just killing you when secondaries are peppering you. At least it would to me. But yeah, Kleber, amazing at long range compared to a Marceau. So we're taking that into our thought process on how we're approaching a game. Every DD is different. They're all playing a little bit differently, gearing a bit of a jack of all trades. I know I have pretty good DPM, even if this Shimakaze would have been the Smalland, who's happens to be on the other side of the map. I still would have felt reasonably confident in this engagement because I know that in an early fight like this, I could get the jump on him, and at the very worst, he pops his radar, kites away, that kind of thing, and we do a reasonable even trade, that kind of thing, and then I just move to play the middle of the map, where my Moskva's a little closer, has radar control. The other reason I moved to the middle of the map here after doing so much damage to the Shimakaze is I thought he might assume I'm pushing down that other flank, and he might go middle. And that does happen to be the case. The other reason is the entire enemy team is on that other side. So again, I'm putting an island between myself and potential threats who could be shooting at me in these destroyer engagements. I've said this a lot already, but it's important because this is major parts of the thought process going on in my head. I'm playing aggressive, but it's smart. It's playing smart. And then of course at the end of this game, all these games had moments like this where I just needed to do some cleanup, right? Where we go get the cap that we've now unlocked by killing the enemy DD, we take the map control back, and we smoke up, we use our torpedoes, whatever it takes to deal with the remaining enemy capital ships. It's really not hard to clean up a lot of these scenarios. You're giving your team such a huge advantage in just information, spotting alone. But torpedoes, it's a massive threat that the enemy has to deal with, that your team no longer has to worry about since you did a good job of killing and neutralizing the enemy destroyer. So Thunder pushing back in, really not a huge deal here. And this is really just the major cleanup work. And every DD can do this. Some don't have smokes, some don't have insane DPM, some don't have torpedoes, but they all have ways of farming out battleships really easily. And you can even deal with a lot of cruisers. Even radar cruisers can be dealt with as a destroyer. Nice blind fire by the Thunder, but we did a good job of trading our HP earlier on, or not trading our HP, and we have more than enough HP to tank that salvo. And a lot of these games really were a lot of cleanup, like I talked about. It's this idea of winning the game in the first engagement. Not playing so aggressively that I'm going to risk dying in that first engagement, but that early aggression, that pressure, dictating the pace of play to your teammates and the enemy team. Killing an enemy destroyer just makes your whole team bolder and play more aggressive and much better, I think. They're not going to sit back and play passive and worry about where they can play. They're going to play much more decisively, and that's really crucial for winning games. That's why I love playing aggressive like this. I am always trying to look for enemy radars. I'm always looking for enemy destroyers, which ones I outgun, which ones will outgun me. So then I'm trying to think of scenarios where if I'm outgunned, I need support. That's all it comes down to, and I can win that engagement, no problem. But if I outgun the enemy, then I'm really taking the fight to the enemy. And here, I outgun a gearing, I way outspot a Kaba, so that's why I played so aggressive. And yeah, yeah, gearing had a hull upgrade, but the AP still does arm on a gearing hull, and it's just disgusting. So we take this cap, our friendly gearing is in the B cap, and the enemy team's just locked out. Like I talked about, decisive play is important, and the enemy team just wasn't able to do that in this game because we locked them out of the middle of the map. They don't have information, they don't know where the torpedoes are coming from, and they just aren't sure of where they should be pushing in to try and win this game or bring the game back. So, I don't know. It's really one of those scenarios where destroyers win games. It's pretty cliche, but if you want to win ranked battles, play a DD and try to play to your destroyer's strengths and try and outplay the enemy destroyer. Even things like gearings and radar Yu Yang, Shimakazes even. I didn't include it in this video. but they can definitely win destroyer engagements, especially Shima using its concealment. It's so frustrating as a gunboat DD being permanently spotted by a Shimakaze that you can't detect. And then that Shimakaze's teammates are just going to deal damage slowly to you. You know, maybe you're in a Kaba or a Kleber with poor concealment, and you're fast, right? You're not taking too much damage from those enemies at longer ranges, but it adds up. And that Shimakaze all the while is staying on relatively good HP, getting a lot of information for the team. It's really, 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 really powerful. And all these DDs play differently. So if one of them isn't quite to your liking, I'm sure there's a different one that is a lot of fun to play. I tend to suggest starting with Daring because it's just so flexible, right? These fast cooldown smokes, the personal hydro, the healing to come back later into games if you make a mistake, and of course the DPM is absolutely insane. It's a really good all-rounder, and the line all the way up is a ton of fun, but that's DDs, man, and that's one of the most insane ranked sessions that I've ever had. I hope you enjoyed these little bit of highlights. I might show some of the battleship stuff that I did later on in this session coming up, but for now, that's the destroyer part. And as far as the builds that I was using, they're generally going to be survivability and concealment focused builds. And then an emphasis on guns where possible, right? If I have a healing or radaring ship, Superintendent is always going to be a good choice. But if I don't have a lot of good utility, maybe it's just smokes, maybe I'll not take Superintendent and I'll go for some more DPM, that kind of thing. But these ships really are all about that initial engagement. In random battles, I'm going to take farming builds. And for example, with the Kleber, I did have a random battle farming build. No concealment here, totally focused on guns. And it can work. I can make it work, but it's far more comfortable when you're using a build for ranked that is very focused on cap control and taking these gunfights, that kind of thing, instead of farming the maximum damage. Concealment is extremely valuable. And that's going to be it. Thank you very much for watching this video. Leave a comment about some of your DD engagements and maybe some advice as well. I can always learn a thing or two about these engagements. Thank you for watching again, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.